So if they come up here to hunt, they're
But the
going to
Fish and Game is funded in huge part as, I mean, it's not just being funded by that, it's being funded by, you know, oil royalties and all kinds of other monies, right?
Absolutely not.
It only comes from people coming out here?
It gets the money from licenses and fees, and then there's the, what's the name of the?
Pittman-Roberts.
Pittman-Roberts money that comes from a tax that's put on sporting goods that comes from the federal government. But that money, the Pittman-Roberts money, has to be matched with local money, and 85% of that comes from license fees and tags. Now that's not all non-residents. We buy licenses too.
Right.
But that's, yeah, mainly the Department of Fish and Game gets
So-
very little money from the general fund.
So
of
it's
the
a
state.
very small number of people, though, that come up here to do that.
That's right.
When we look at the number of people that come here to, you know, fly out to look at bears, who are here to, you know, drive into Denali and see animals, I mean, we have millions and millions and millions of dollars that come into this state from people who want to see what's on the brochure. And the practices that Vic is talking about, they don't show those on the brochure. If we did, people might not want to come. And
Show what on the brochure?
well, you know, if you showed like the pictures of wolves hanging on planes, or them being gunned down, or bears that have been snared, or wolves that have been gassed, wolf pups, there's a good chance that people might look at that and just be like, wow, that's not what I want to be about.
Well, you know, we spend a lot more money managing our fish stocks in this state, and we don't rely on non-residents to manage our fish stocks. I think it's inappropriate, and it's a tool that the commercial guiding industry and the pro hunting industry uses to try to pin the entire management of our game species on funds raised from non-residents. I think it's inappropriate, and I don't think the people of Alaska believe that it has to be that way.
Well, I didn't realize that much money was what was funding it.
It's
because
not 80%. That's a misrepresentation as well.
Well, it seems whatever the percentage that it is, the fact that those monies are supporting Fish and Game in even a partial way, it seems to me that just can't be. We can't be relying on that small of a population, that small of a user population to be in charge.
They're not in charge.
It's a misrepresentation.
Well, wait, it's not.
It is.
You know, it's not a misrepresentation.
Well, we'll Google it on the break.
Yeah, we can do that.
Vic, what do you?
But you got to remember that these non-resident hunters, they don't have a vote. They don't get a vote on what our game laws are. They don't get to participate in the public process or anything else. They just show up and write their checks, and the other thing about them is very few of them take the meat home. They give it to somebody here in the state, particularly in the rural areas.
Right.
So why not?
So basically, it's kind of a testosterone bump, and they go home.
Bingo. But the same thing goes on in every state in the union, and I will point out, like in Colorado and Wyoming, they charge $950 for a tag for an elk.
Oh,
we
we're
charge
a hell of a
$500
deal.
for moose. We're a bargain.
We're a bargain.
I think
That's
we should
great.
charge them more.
I think we're giving away the farm, folks.
Bingo.
And in those states that he references, they keep the non-resident harvest to 10% of the opportunity. In Alaska, the non-resident hunter has access to 100% of the harvestable surplus in this state.
And I think we need to talk about that when we come back from the break and get your thoughts on this, because I can see the wheels turning over there. I think the smoke's coming next. We'll be right back with more Up North. All right. And thanks to the magic of the Google, we were able to look up some numbers, and we'll have them posted on the website. It wasn't 80% of the whole. And we're trying to figure out what all the math is, because, you know, it's on state paperwork. Exactly. And math is hard. Vic, before we went to the break, do you want to address some of the things that had come up there?
Well, I'd like to address a whole bunch of things.
He said address, not undress. Jeez.
I'm a biologist, and you know, I like to talk about some of the biological issues, you know. We have in this state something called the Intensive Management Law, which is a unique piece of legislation to Alaska. As far as I know, no other state or province has an intensive management law. And the intensive management law dictates that we shall restore depleted populations of moose and caribou back to former levels of abundance. That's exactly what it says. And so, you know, nobody ever has defined depleted. It's not defined in the laws, and the Game Board never defined it. And so, you know, there are no other real firm standards or directions as to how to do that. And I like to tell a little story about how that is similar to something else. You know, the intensive management effort has been labeled managing for abundance. And that sounds pretty neat, you know. Who would be against having lots of animals within the state? But the legislature, in directing that, it's kind of like if the legislature had decided one day that wouldn't it be great if we managed the economy for abundance, okay?
It would.
And let's pass a law that mandates every wage earner in the state of Alaska to make at least $100,000 a year. Wouldn't that be great? You know, the homeless people could get good jobs and buy cars and houses, and we'd be managing the economy for abundance. Well, you know, a second grader could probably say that's ridiculous, you know, that you could pass a law like that, but it's basically economic and social constraints that affect earning power. It's not a legislative mandate. And so we can understand that, but yet at the same time, we look at this intensive management law and we say, well, that's great, you know, it's designed to manage wildlife for abundance. But there are biological constraints that sometimes restrict that. And the Game Board has generally done, I think, in my opinion, a poor job of understanding some of those biological constraints. So that's point number one. Point number two is I always like to talk about what happened at McGrath, because McGrath was the first of these cases where there was a predator control program adopted in 2003. And it's a good example of how serious trouble can be if you don't do things right. Okay, well, McGrath is a town of about 450 people out on the Kuskokwim River. And in the mid-90s, they came to the Game Board and they said, well, we don't have enough moose, and we think there's too many wolves, and we'd like a wolf control program. And the board adopted a program based on very, very sketchy data. But it was never implemented. And so the people came back to the board in '99. And again, the board reauthorized that, but it wasn't adopted. So then the thing went totally political, and there was a legislative hearing in Juneau, and there was a wolf summit in McGrath, kind of the wildlife equivalent of a tea party. And so in 2000, Tony Knowles appointed a committee to try to look into this and find some solutions. First thing the committee did was say to the Department of Fish and Game, well, how many moose do we need there? And the department said 3,500 at most to satisfy the subsistence demand. And so the team said, well, how many do we have now? And the department said, well, we don't really know, but we think 850. Oh my goodness, you know, we've got 850 and we need 3,500. It's kind of a crisis. So the team recommended wolf control, and the board bought off on that. But before it could be implemented, finally, the Department of Fish and Game went out there and did an accurate, reliable census, and guess what? 3,600 moose. You know, we didn't have 850 moose. We had more than enough moose already.
They should have filled in their census forms.
Yeah, good point. So the issue kind of dropped off the radar until Frank Murkowski was elected and appointed 6 new members to the board, and they said, well, you know, 3,600 moose, good start, but wouldn't it be slick if we had 7,000 moose? And so they readjusted their objectives, and they never went to the department and said, well, you know, can we really support 7,000? They just decided that's what they wanted, went ahead, authorized a wolf control program and a bear reduction program where they transplanted bears. Well, anyway, so that's a good example of how serious the problems can be. Here's the lesson I draw from it. Let's just say that we never did that second census, and everybody assumed there were 850 moose. And then we adopted this wolf control program, and 4 years later we went back out there and did another moose census and came up with 3,600, which was the number that was there all along. But we didn't know it. And so everybody would have said, oh my goodness, another shining example of how well wolf control worked. We went from 850 to 3,600 in 4 years. Wrong. We went from 3,600 to 3,600 in 4 years, and the only reason we ever knew that, it was because we fortunately did a moose census in time.
Well, can
So-
we?